Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland, Canada. We have our own time zone. We're actually half an hour ahead of most places or behind or whatever, but we have a very unique island that we live on here in the North Atlantic Ocean. And you are joining me on Let's Get Writing, which is a show that tells the stories behind the stories. If you like to read, if you have a book in your heart that you'd like to put onto paper someday, or you have ideas and you're not sure where to go with them or how to do it, I hope that this show is going to help you, inspire you, and motivate you to do it. Just do it. And I'm so excited tonight to have a very special guest joining me all the way from the other side of North America in California, Laguna Beach. That's a mouthful. Anyway, my guest is Jared Rosen, and I'm going to bring him on right now. And up he comes, I hope. There we go. Be up there?
Oh.
There you are. Hi.
How's everything going in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean?
Well, it's probably not as warm as where you are, Jared. It no doubt is a little cooler, but we're pretty happy with the weather we've been having, and the snow is just about gone. And I suppose, of course, you're probably wearing sandals.
Not right now. As a matter of fact, you can't even go to the beach, so it's tempting to drive past it. But we're all in a interesting period of history here, so our children will have stories to tell their children.
They certainly will. Well, I want to just introduce you a little bit. You're called the Book Whisperer. You are the Chief Visionary Officer of Dreamsculpt Media. You have published more than 50 media ebooks. You're an author, and of course, in my mind, you're an inspiration. And I'm so thrilled to have you here on the show. I had the opportunity to sit in on some of your seminars, and you have so much information to share and so much experience in this line of work. And I just wanted to bring you to people who can maybe learn all about the wealth of information that you have stored between your two ears.
Absolutely. And other places.
But tell me, before we start, how's the smog down there? Has this slowdown actually, do you see the sun?
Well, living in Laguna Beach is not too smoggy, but by the ocean is pretty nice. I lived in Hollywood as well, and no, on a smoggy day, you can't see any mountains. From here up in the hills, it's like being in Montana. I mean, the snow peaks, and driving on the 405, it throws you back to like the 30s or something. What it must have been like driving through Los Angeles before the hordes of millions that have taken to the road. So, I mean, there's always a silver lining. I think it's all about our awakening. So, in whatever way it's touching us in our lives.
And that's true. And maybe a little bit of the silver lining. People ask me, they say, well, how has your life changed as a writer? And I'm thinking, not a whole lot. We tend to spend time in isolation. We spend time with our thoughts by ourselves. So it's not as dramatically different, perhaps, for people who write. But it's going to certainly be a time that if there was some way we could make an effort to record what we're going through, it would be amazing. And that's something that I'm working on.
Wonderful. I'm sure that will be fruitful. I mean, there's a lot of deep feelings and emotions, and a lot of opportunity to look at the world through a different lens. I mean, I know people, when they go grocery shopping now, it's like, really thank you for stocking those shelves. I never thought about you before, but what you're doing is keeping me fed. So I think during times of crisis, it awakens people's kindness and compassion, and it's a good thing.
And we do think about that, because we're all so much on automatic pilot these days, where we go from point A to B and we don't even know what we've seen, who we sped by or who we haven't even smiled at. And I hope that this time to maybe sit with our families and reflect on what's important. I mean, what really is important. Yeah, and maybe do some reading. And writing.
And people are doing reading, and people are doing writing. I mean, I'm fortunate enough in the business that I do, where I help people, authors, develop their concept, develop their book, and publish it, and create their platform, and all that. This is a really good time. The people I've been talking to, really see like there's a depth to, and just the quote unquote lockdown. Really, I've translated to those who I talk to is, here's your writing retreat you've been looking for, and never had the time to do. So I think there'll be some good, we have, besides the 50 books that we did as media enhanced ebooks, with Dreamsculpt Books and Media, which we kind of restarted from Dreamsculpt Media in 2017. We already have 10 books out, and we have another 20 books or so in development. So it's exciting for me, because every book is like a new child being born, and hopefully one that will bring goodness to the world, and open hearts and minds, and that's my passion.
Mm-hmm. And Jared, you're nonfiction. You don't do anything with fiction at all, do you?
Well, no, actually, as a book developer and publisher right now, there is one book I worked on that will probably end up being a series of books. That's a historical fiction, and I have another historical fiction. A couple of other authors that have come to me, interesting enough, historical fiction. And then I have worked with people on the development of their stories through memoirs. But I'm really excited, and the books that I develop, if people come to me with a memoir, and it's pretty difficult to get out on media, as you know, and talk about your own life, unless of course you're so famous, everyone wants to know all the details. So when I work with people that start out and it's like, oh, I have this memoir, I help them see how it can be a narrative or creative nonfiction, where they're doing the storytelling, but there's something, there's takeaways they're teachable, coachable, presentable, so that when they get out there, they're not just talking about themselves. And it's better to position a book as a nonfiction. In this case, we call it creative nonfiction. And then there are people that come to me with nonfiction books that need storytelling in it, because it's just very generic, and you don't really feel the soul of the author. They're just giving you information. And I think information and knowledge and wisdom and the didactic is much more absorbable if it comes in the form of storytelling, so that people retain it. They, if you tell them the story, put them in the picture, and then share the wisdom, they'll absorb it more so than if you're just, downloading all the facts to them.
Well, and I have to agree with you, and you've spoken quite a bit about that there's always a creative element to even nonfiction, and how you do present it. I think we all like to hear story, and we all like to know the why behind someone's thoughts or why they've done that. So is that your role? Do you actually draw that out of people? When people come to work with you, what's the experience like?
Well, I have people that come to me with a dissertation that want to transpose it into a nonfiction book. I have people that come to me with incredible storytelling, and yet we're going to need to find the right way to position it. But ideally, the stories are inside of them, and I'm a catalyst. And it's just natural for me. It doesn't have to be a book; it can be a movie, it can be a business. I somehow have this ability to hang out with somebody and see their great work that has yet to be born through them. And I love that quote by I believe it's Goethe, although a lot of people give it to one of my favorite people that's not on this plane anymore, Wayne Dyer, and that is, don't die with your unfinished music in you. And this is a time when people say, I have this in me, I've never had the time. And then they usually, have some self-judgment. Well, it's really not that good, or I don't know if anyone really wants it, or there's not a market for it. And that's where I come in. It's like, let's take your stories, let's take your knowledge and wisdom, and let's structure it into something that's going to be extremely valuable for the reader, because it's entertaining, it's enlightening, it's authentic. And I have to say that term, I use it a bit when I help an author develop the book, as well as their platform. I describe it as creating their authentic author platform, because so many times you just look at some other people and say, well, that worked, I should do it like that. And people miss the boat when They don't just go deep inside themselves and say, what is it, before you even get the podcast, the radio show, all the things that people use to broadcast their messaging. Of course, blogging and now the big, mothership is a book for most people. But to authentically know how you want to touch somebody's life, like soul to soul, like what is it that is so, you're so passionate about, the way in which you share it will ignite that passion, will awaken something in the reader, will give them an experience as if they're in your shoes. So that's the authenticity, and then in truth and honesty, without deception, without playing games, which it happens a lot in publishing. We've seen it for years with digital publishing, where people publish and their whole focus is to be a best-selling book. They spend all this money so they can brag and say it's a bestseller. Those in the industry know that, it's the difference between a New York Times bestseller and an Amazon bestseller.
Mm-hmm.
But so authentic really is when you show up, your people. You can call it target market, target audience. I don't like targets. I like souls. So I call it your soul tribe. The people that how it's the knowledge is filtered through you, and specifically your own unique storytelling. That knowledge and that wisdom will be much more. The people will receive it in a more genuine way by your authentic expression. Which
Well,
can
you
be,
always,
edgy and intense and deep and vulnerable.
well, you say there's more to being an author than writing a book, and I love that, because I think there is so much more. There's all the different platforms. If you can get your head around that, that's pretty challenging in and of itself, and can be almost overwhelming to people. Where do I begin? How do I even really make that audience before you have the book? You can go as far as that. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that. What holds people back, and what do they have to be to make this happen?
Well, the tagline that actually on our website, there's more to writing a book, there's more to being an author than writing a book, is more true now than ever, because, well, years ago, I'll backtrack and I'll get back to your question. Years and years ago, the author was the artist that the publisher endowed and gave them that advance and said, here, we want to own the rights to publish it because we think it's of value, literary merit. And the author wrote the book. But nowadays, what we're dealing with is only a very small percentage of books are traditionally published, and they usually have a lot of money behind them. And the publishers, which most likely are very large, multi-billion-dollar media companies that may own that very, down-home sounding imprint. You think it's a little cottage in Vermont, and this, the 26th floor on Madison Avenue. So most books are being published digitally, hybrid publishing, whatever you may call that. And well, how do people find it? It used to be they go to the bookstore or they go to the library. And now mostly people are going to find it obviously online. And how are they going to connect with you? They connect because you're building a platform, as we talked about. And that can be in many forms. It can be, saying a podcast, it can be video, whatever, but it's about building that community. And I know there was another part to your question, but
sure. Well, I think it was, well, what are they required to do? It almost feel overwhelming.
How do you get it? I remember. How do you get it started? Mm-hmm. How do you wrap your mind around all this? Mm-hmm. Well, I think it does start with the seed is the idea. It's what I would term the soul of the book. Somebody wants to have a child that may be very spiritual, meditate, and they have a name, Lola. I could feel her soul around. That's kind of like what I do when I work with people with the book. I know it's around there. And so how do you bring it down? So a person on their own will just start writing, and or they'll come up with an idea. This is a great idea for a book. And many people do fine with that. But what I'm just going back to, there's more to being an author and writing a book is, it really is like a strategic blueprint with milestones. It's like, where do you want to go with this? So there's so many different directions for what you can do. If you are a thought leader, your books on leadership, or you're therapist, a healer, a personal growth coach. It's really basically positions you to be more of an authority, which brings us back to that awe thing, like authentic, authority, author. So awe, it's your own awe. You have to actually really have a vision, and then someone like myself can help you, like you said earlier, clear the obstacles. The number one obstacle that people have why they don't write their book is they don't think it's valuable. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, well, I don't understand, who's going to buy this book. I mean, it's interesting to me, but I don't, and why there are other books. I went on to Amazon. I was working with one author, and he said, I'm not sure about this. His book was about his near-death experience, which really wasn't that interesting. And it's interesting that he had that experience, but like, well, what else? And he said, I did a search and I saw like 1,000 books on near-death experiences on Amazon. So why should I write this book? As I went further with him, like, what's the soul of the book? The soul of the book is the fact that what he's really saying is when he had that near-death experience, he had a voice that told him, you're not done yet. And we've heard that before. So then all of a sudden it came to me as I was taking a walk, dying on purpose. So it's like, yeah, the story is important that you had that experience, but now that you had that experience and that voice said to you, whatever that voice is telling you, like your time is not done or whatever those words are, what are you doing with your life? If you die tomorrow, what do you still need to reconcile with your child or father or ex-business partner, the things that really matter? And so the book came out, Dying on Purpose, and we gave, and that's how you can develop. The book is the centerpiece, but there's also creating a little quiz which could be used, because if you do that quiz, it's a pretty hard thing. Like, what do you want to do before you die? Are you settled with your finances? Are you settled with all the different things? So that's what I do. I'm saying more than a book is obviously in nonfiction. In fiction, I have a couple authors I'm working with. One that's written award-winning screenplays that were movies that you and I may have seen, and she's working on a book now. So sometimes it goes the other direction. And when I see what can be done, in some cases for a fiction book, it really is something that could be pitched to Netflix for a dramatic series. But I think the first thing, and to answer your question, to the original question, is that the person needs to do is take inventory of what they truly want out of this process, and then look at that blueprint and how they get from A to Z. What I do is I help them. The first thing is the what is it? And anyone out here now that has that idea about writing a book, try 75 words or less. What is it? Because that's what's going to be on the back of the book when somebody, let's say, goes to a bookstore to see if they want to buy your book. If you can capture them, let them know what it's about, what's in it for them, what they're going to get out of it in 75 words or less. That's your first step. Your second step is to structure it in a way that you've defined what you really want in each chapter and the sequence of chapters to create the experience you want when they complete the book. And then there's a whole branding process of the title, the subtitle, the subheadings, the chapter titles. So if you kind of own it, you use your own phraseology. A generic book could be a great book with a generic title. Nobody will find it. It's just, but sometimes there are books that aren't so great. They have such an incredible title. What is that book? And then there are great books that have great titles, but people are intrigued because it provokes their thought. It makes them wonder what it is.
Well, you mentioned title, and that was one of the things I wanted to ask you. There's so many books out there, and I'm assuming that nonfiction is an extremely competitive genre for you to be seen.
Has genres within it. So nonfiction is like everything that's not fiction.
Yeah, that's true. It is.
I'm sorry.
So the title, the title has to be something that grabs people. And I think, I can't think of one right now, but we hear titles, we hear them and we go, oh, I want to read that book, maybe just based on that alone. So it's a pretty important part.
It's very important. And the rule of thumb that at least I believe is true for a nonfiction book is don't make it a generic, don't make it, the key to personal growth. I mean, it does. I mean, even in the subtitle, it's generic, like the 5 keys to personal growth. It's still generic, but the title needs to seduce them, and the subtitle for nonfiction book needs to basically. So one is more abstract and one is more concrete. You need to tell them what it is. It's a guide to 10 keys to changing your life, or the quintessential guide, or the, whatever it is, to whatever it is that they're going to be reading about, so they know what it is. I use the example because it's such a good example of John Gray's book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, just because John has created an incredible brand out of that. I mean, he's got, John, Mars and Venus in the bedroom. He may have one on the porch, Mars and Venus, in the laundry room. He's just created this, phenomenal brand, at least back then with, there was a game board, like an actual game you can play, Mars and Venus, but nobody knows what the heck it even means. If you look at the subtitle, it defines it's about relationships. Why men aren't from Mars? Men are from their mother's wombs, right? Why are women from Venus? So when you sometimes it's too much focus on creating the book as a brand that you lose the literary merit. But if you have a well-written book, keep the title. I'd like to invoke Malcolm Gladwell, who had a huge hit with Tipping Point, which kind of tells you it's like a tipping point. Oh, that's good. And he went on and he became more abstract. I think his next title was Blink. So that's one pointer is don't keep it generic.
Interesting. Now you talked about media ebooks. Tell us a little bit more about that. What are you referring to? Well,
that's something that in 2010 I started Dreamsculpt Media Inc. and actually published 4 books. They were hybrid published. They were books that were in bookstores, and I just saw the whole industry kind of. I mean, at that point, I was looking at, people were going to NewYorkTimes.com and watching videos produced by the New York Times. It's like people are going to get. Everyone told me, as I was an early adopter, one of the first people doing this. Why are you putting videos in books? You're killing a book, but it's not a book. What the M2 ebook was I'd take a book like by Jack Canfield and Bill Gladstone, the Golden Motorcycle Gang, and 20 pages. You flip the pages and there's videos. It could be Deepak Chopra or someone like that on a video in the book, and that it helps position the book, but it also gives more experience, more knowledge and wisdom. We did one that had by an author and a recording artist. So when you flip the pages, it was another song, there were lyrics, and then it was the stories. So I really got into that, but to distill it, to take a book and give it away, that was the vision of the M2 ebook, M squared ebook. We trademarked it. We did it 50, 60 of them, some for some filmmakers. And why I moved away from that was basically back in those days, you didn't have auto-playing videos scrolling on social media. So we moved to, for authors, creating like 30-second videos using stock video and captions. Because when you scroll Facebook, otherwise you have to go on a browser to open up the M2 ebook and flip through it. And everything's coming quicker and faster and more distilled. And so we're down to like 30-second videos when we produce a video for an author.
And these would be book trailers, which you see more and more of this type of thing now.
Yes.
That I think it's video. People like to read. They still want to have books. Many times they like to have them in their hands. But if you happen to be online and you saw this fantastic trailer, good chance you're going to go get the book. And
I'll do a little boasting here, something I don't do too often, but just to clarify. We first started calling book trailers, and because it was on the website, so I click on that book trailer. I call them social media book videos. I think most book trailers, personally, are ridiculous. Trailers for movies are great. I go into Netflix or wherever on Prime. I want to see a movie. I watch the trailer. They're well done. They may cost $500,000 to several million to make a trailer. Could be more than that. Who knows? But book trailers, a lot of times it's just taking a photo of the book with motion graphics and like buy the book. I don't believe people want advertisements for anything on social media. So what we do is we're like, what's the true? Let's get to the heart of the message. For instance, one book we published called The Whole Foot Revolution. When I was working with Dr. Anthony Weiner in the development of the book, I learned something that I never knew, that when you walk barefoot, there's this piezoelectric charge that comes from the ground and that your bones store it like a battery. And it just hit me. It's like, we plug in our cell phones to charge but we don't take off our shoes, stand on the earth and plug in our cells. And so 30-second video that gave people that information, they'd be like, you know what? I'm going to go outside and stand in the backyard and feel this energy come up. And by the way, at the end of it, there's a book cover that says The Whole Foot Revolution. So I tend more to that because I just think that people want the word of the day from me is authenticity, and also excitement, enlightenment, consciousness, awakening, all those new age type of words, but also entertainment and delight, or awareness, knowledge, wisdom. So that's what we do. If you go onto dreamsculpt.com, the website, you can see about a dozen of those we call them book trailers for now.
Great. Well, I think you've left us with a lot to think about. I definitely am going to think all night. Maybe I'll meditate like I'll go But authentic.
That's a good thing. I'm in awe of everything.
I'm in awe of you. You have so much information to share, and thank you so much. I know you're busy. I know you have to run off to another seminar, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share some of this with us. And we'll try to be as authentic as we can when we're writing our books, whether they be fiction or nonfiction. And I just want to thank you so much, Jared.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on and for being able to share with your community, and hopefully anyone up there in Newfoundland. Hey, come to Laguna Beach. If we'll do a house swap. I could use an island in the middle of the Atlantic at this point.
And there you go.
Like I'm living on an island in the middle of the Atlantic now, with only to go to. No one to cut my hair or getting a massage. Wonderful to do on your show. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, it would definitely be a switch for you if you came up here. And
I hear Anthony Weiner's going to be your guest next week.
I hope so.
He wants to do it. So you can have another.
All right, everyone out there.
Let's talk about plugging your feet in.
Yeah, and actually I do that, earthing, and it's even better when you do it on the beach. So next week, the show is going to be on Earth Day. So Dr. Anthony Weiner, thank you for delivering that. I didn't get a chance to check and see. He's going to be our guest talking about the feet and bonding to the earth. So that's going to be exciting. And thank you for helping me set that up. I really appreciate it.
Another Dreamsculpt author here to serve the world.
Yeah, well, I'll be back for more authors.
Okay,
You're so fantastic.
So good to be on your show, and be well, everyone. Stay well.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye now.
Bye now.
I gotta hide you. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that show. I sure appreciated having Jared here with me. And just to remind you, this show is every Wednesday night at 7:30. It would be just so lovely if you could like us and share it. And if you have ideas of things you might like to hear about, please do send them in to me. I'd be more than happy to reach out to various authors. And you know, the world is open to us on this platform. And we can go to any time zone, any place, to learn about people who are in the process of writing. And so thank you so much for joining me. And please, again, stay safe, stay home, read lots, support your favorite authors, and of course, get writing. And if you could give us that like and share, it would be so appreciated. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you right here, same time, in Newfoundland, Canada, our unique time zone, next Wednesday. Bye for now.